Hello friends, welcome back to Figure Study and welcome back to NemeSeptember, because I still have a lot of these things to go through. Today we are taking a look at Perfect Effects PE DX06B Nemesis Gorira, or the Nemesis version of their Beast Gorira figure, which was their rendition of Optimal Optimus. I've actually had this figure for a really long time and I've been dreading doing a video on it. Mostly, it's not because I don't like the figure, I actually love the figure, but it's the other two modes, the vehicle modes, that I'm just like, there's so many little hinges, so many little intricacies and things like that, and I was just really not looking forward to doing a video on that. So, I'm not going to. It's my channel and I can do what I want. So yeah, if you want to see what the vehicle modes for this toy look like, I'm not going to do the transformations into them, I'm sorry. I've yet to actually transform this toy into either of those modes. I've only ever gone from gorilla to robot. But I do have stock photos, so if you're curious to know what those different modes look like, well, here is the plain mode thing. And that's what that looks like. It's the same as the regular Beast Gorira version, but in this color scheme. And here's what the car thing looks like. And that's also, yeah. I'm sure that that's going to disappoint some people, and I am sorry, but I just... But this is awesome. There are definitely some limitations with this figure, with the articulation and stuff like that. Like, because of the way that all this goes together, you don't really get a whole lot of posability in the legs. They just kind of go in and out, rotate a bit, and go forward and backward a bit. You don't get any knees, really. Feet can move around, but most of the articulation in the gorilla mode you get with the arms and the head. It's not super posable, but I feel like posable enough to do some decent gorilla-ish poses. And in terms of specifically the whole Nemesis thing, I did actually have Beast Gorira for a small amount of time. Very cool figure in its own right. I got the second run, so it had like the better waist clip and all that, and that's great. But there was that, I forget what it was called, but it was the red and blue version that they released that was like impossible to find at that point, because at that point it had been out for a couple of years, or maybe a year, and it was just out of stock everywhere, and I wasn't about to pay the absurd aftermarket prices for it. So I was kind of like, okay, I'll do the regular Beast Gorira, and then they announced this, and I was like, I'm getting this. So yeah, I got rid of that one, got the Nemesis version, and I do not regret it, have not regretted it. This figure is fantastic, and it looks so good in the Nemesis color scheme. I know it's very reminiscent of, say, Optimus Primal in the color scheme, because it's primarily, you know, black, white, with a little bit of red, a little bit of blue accents, but this is just so cool. One thing, I did fan mode a little bit on this guy, and it's not really a fan mode because it's really simple, but if I adjust the camera a bit, you can see these little flaps on the arms here. These are normally pegged in here towards the top of the forearm, and that is fine. That's where I have it in robot mode, but I feel like for the gorilla mode, I prefer how flipping it around the other way makes the forearms look a little beefier. So for this, instead of pegging it in up here, I flip it around and peg that in down here. It just kind of beefs up the forearm a bit, you know? It makes it look a little bit chunkier. It makes it kind of like it tapers off going closer to the elbow and then gets a little bit bulkier as it gets closer to the hand. I don't know, proportionally I feel like that works better for a gorilla. Getting right to the whole aesthetics thing on this. This figure looks incredible. I love how it's like, it's very obviously a robotic gorilla. This almost looks like whatever that Zoids thing is called. I don't know the name of it, I just know that it's like a big gorilla robot tank thing. It's got a very similar vibe to it in the sense that it's got all of these interesting kind of intricate details and angles to it. So they're very, like there are smooth edges in this, but there aren't as many. So like the shoulders are a bit more blocky. The cylindrical bits around the edge of the torso where the shoulders meet the torso they're cylindrical, but they also have a lot of interesting definition. There's a lot of robotic kind of lines and grids in the forearms, as well as just the coloration. Shoulders, again, just really nice designs there. The chest is suitably like robot bulky gorilla, I think. Down on the legs, they're chunky, stocky, got the big gorilla toes. I love that head. It is very much a robot gorilla head, like the sloped brow, the exaggerated proportions with the smaller eyes and much larger mouth. And I love the open and close his mouth too. That's just a nice touch. Some nice teeths in there. Like it kind of stops ever so slightly when you close it just like that. So if you want him to just be baring his teeth, you can do that, or push it closed all the way. And I love the color variance in here where you've got this kind of gunmetal for most of the face, and then the black plastic. The way it's integrated, the way that they like didn't paint certain things and painted other things, it just creates some really interesting lines and contours in the face. And of course, those wonderful metallic red eyes, metallic blue on the top there. It's good stuff. The wings on the side do kind of get in the way, and I'm not the biggest fan of these, but they're on there. But even the wings have some nice silver and slightly red metallic-y paint on there. And around the back, got his gun pegged on there, just kind of stored. Pop this off, we'll look at that more in robot mode. Come on. And along the back here, you can see there's nice... I like the detailing back here, like these engines, and again, just the color separation with like the accents done in like that blue with some of the silver on the black. It's a great color combination. And then some of this is the front of the robot mode legs, so we're not gonna look too hard at some of this, but still, it's good. I like how some of the proportions and stuff shift around when you go between robot and gorilla mode too. This kind of helps to sell that animal shape a little bit better. Alright, so let's move this rather heavy, chunky fellow back here and bring in some size comparisons. Here he is with the usual assortment of standard-ish size deluxes. I left them all in their robot modes this time because this is a vaguely bipedal humanoid robot, so I figure I'll just compare them to the humanoid robot modes. But yeah, this is a very large figure. And here he is with the duck tank. Okay, time to transform this thing into the humanoid robot mode, and I'm gonna do my best to keep all of this on camera. It will be a challenge though, because this is a very big toy. Not Scorponok big, but it is pretty darn big, so I'm gonna do my best to keep it on camera, but we'll see how it goes. Okay, that definitely could have been a bit cleaner on my part. I do apologize. It's a little bit tricky to remember how the stuff in the chest is supposed to go. In particular, how you're supposed to configure the gorilla head and the giant wheel and all that. Incidentally, I forgot to mention it during the portion of the video about the gorilla mode, but I love how his stomach is just a tire. It's not a spare tire exactly, but it's a detail that I really like. Anyway, the robot mode. Holy crap, this looks incredible. this is an amazing looking robot mode. I love the proportions, I love the overall style, and it does a similar thing to the gorilla mode in that it's like a kind of a familiar design, but run through a bit of a filter with like some harder edges and some more, I think, pleasing proportions. It's also cool how the leg detail actually changes from one mode to the other because the way that the legs compress and extend, some of this stuff is hidden, and like this stuff's hidden around the back in gorilla mode, so it does definitely feel different. The chest changes because the gorilla chest ends up swinging around to the other side, and this is underneath the backpack in the gorilla mode. So this backpack actually ends up working like a shell. You've still got all that junk kind of hanging out back there, similar to how there was a bunch of junk hanging out in the, like this whole thing was hiding behind the backpack in the gorilla mode, but I really like how that ends up disguising everything. It's really cool. I love how beefy this guy is, and lots of little details just accentuate the color because, yeah, it's primarily black and then white, but then you've got these little red accents here and there in the shoulders and the forearms and the knees and the calves. And you've also got some silver accents with like the toes, and again in the forearms and even the forearm plates, and it's just so many little things in here that are really interesting. It's also cool how the entire torso section, when you're looking at it in robot mode, it's like, you know, kind of straight, but when you go into the gorilla mode, the torso kind of separates and shifts forward and comes back down, so that changes the center of gravity and makes the whole leaning forward gorilla posture work so much better. So many neat things with this toy. And one thing that is a little bit off-putting for me specifically is these little bits here in the hips. They do have a tendency to get out of their own way, which is good, but they're just so thin, I worry that I'm going to break them. I haven't, you know, clearly I haven't, and I don't think it's a common problem or anything like that. It's just got me a little paranoid with certain poses and like transformation and stuff. I'll like move it up out of the way to just try and keep things clear as best I can, and it makes me nervous, but I haven't had any breakage yet. I love this thing so much. Color scheme, like I said, is great, like the black and white and the red accents here and there, silver accents here and there, but then you also get a little bit of like gunmetal in primarily the chest, but in a few other places as well. And that blue for the stomach window there is fantastic. Granted, I know it's not the correct Nemesis color scheme because the windows should be red if it's a proper Nemesis color scheme, but I don't care. This looks amazing. Again, these wings are kind of annoying because when you're trying to look at them from the side, they absolutely get in the way, but you can hinge them at least slightly out of the way. And I'm not entirely sure what the correct orientation is for these, like if it's supposed to be more down like this, sort of covering the arms a little bit, or are they supposed to be angled back like this? I just don't know. But you can work around them. They do get in the way, especially when it comes to like getting them on the shelf, but like if you kind of angle them around and twist them and stuff like that, you can find ways to position them to get them out of the way. I just would have liked to not have to deal with them as an element, but I can understand why they're there because it is part of the original design. Also, that trick with extending the arms is amazing. I know I'm supposed to be talking about the aesthetics rather than the engineering, but I really like the engineering on this figure. I like how this shoulder thing, like this whole arm just pops out and accordions down, and this comes back around to connect. It actually does snap in place up there. So you end up with like drastically different proportions on the arms, which goes even further to working with that gorilla mode design. And then you've got the pauldrons that actually do get up and out of the way for when you want to bring the arms up. It's all extremely clever. And that head is, from what I have seen, from what I understand, from what I remember, that's pretty much Optimus Primal. Like the color scheme, the metallic blue head, the white faceplate. It's very Optimus Primal and not so much Nemesis, but I don't care. It still looks freaking cool. I like the metallic red for the eyes. I also like that they painted like the entire head all the way around is that metallic blue, but then you've got the silver for the ear bits, and the telltale Optimus Prime head crest. And I like how that kind of matte white for the faceplate really contrasts nicely with the rest of the head colors. And while we're here, he does have a matrix, kind of. It's just this little thing, it doesn't come out or anything like that, but I appreciate the fact that it's not a huge pain in the butt to get to, and it really doesn't seem to have sacrificed anything else on the toy to make it happen, so I'm okay with that. One thing that kind of disappoints me with regards to the mechanics of this guy, though, is I really do like how he's got these guns on his back that are nicely detailed, even the undersides here. And they flip up and come around, but like, they don't quite sit right on his shoulders when his shoulders are up like this, which I think is okay. I actually kind of prefer having them up slightly rather than straight down, and you can kind of see that you can see under them a little bit there. But they do have the ability to lock in. There are these little square holes here that lock in over these bits here and give him much more kind of straight-on artillery kind of configuration for the shoulder cannons, but the problem with that is it makes the arms a little bit less dynamic looking, and it definitely gets in the way of him being able to see. So usually I don't use the guns, but I appreciate having the option. I also, again, I really like having this joint here. That's great. I like how that kind of puffs out the chest a bit. This little clip back here that locks the backpack in place, if you pull that down, it will allow you to rotate the waist, but you can see those hip pieces. It's really easy for those to kind of get caught, and I worry about them breaking. Like if you rotate the waist this way, this is not moving. This piece is not moving at all. This piece can get a lot of range, but like that greatly limits how much you can pose this leg when the torso is turned in this direction. Same for, when it's turned the other way. So generally, I don't end up using that waist joint, and I just leave this locked in for the extra solidity's sake. It's cool that the option's there. I just kind of like, again, these skirt flappy things just, they make things a little more complicated than I feel like they need to be. Small gripe, all things considered. Now before we finish things up, let's take a look at his rifle, which was pegged onto his back, and it can peg into the same spot, or spots, because he's got this kind of peg on both sides, so you can just peg the gun in there or there. But this is a good looking gun. Let's flip down the handle. Forgot to do that. It's a good looking gun, and I like the fact that they painted it too. They didn't just leave it as like a gray plastic or black plastic. It's that black plastic with the gunmetal color, with even a few details left unpainted to kind of bump up that contrast. And they also painted the little venting section in blue, which looks really good, and this just pegs into his hand, as you would expect. Another thing to mention with regards to the hands, I, for whatever reason, thought that the thumb articulation is a little weird because it only goes this way due to the transformation. These flappy things do get in the way. It doesn't get in the way this way, but if you're going this way, that thumb will push up against it. So that's a little bit annoying. But one thing that was kind of weird to me, like I didn't realize, I thought the fingers were all like one fused piece, except for the fingertips. But no, they're actually just really stiff. So if you push enough, you can kind of break in the joint a little bit. And you can see that the fingers are actually all individually jointed in two different spots, which is great. I love having that kind of that level of articulation. With a figure this big, this expensive, I feel like that's kind of necessary. Okay, let's these wings get in the way. There we go. Get this guy properly situated for our size comparisons. Here he is with the standard-ish deluxe crew, and yeah, he's very big. I appreciate it though. He's like big and chunky, and it's just so good. It's so good. I love this figure. And here he is with the duck tank. So I do believe that is going to do it for Perfect Effects PE DX06B Nemesis Gorira. I've already made it abundantly clear, but I absolutely love this figure. I mean, Beast Gorira was cool. Beast Gorira was very cool. But in this color scheme, it's no contest. At least not for me. This was a very worthwhile upgrade in my mind. so glad I exchanged the more transmetal Optimal Optimus style figure for this one, because it looks so cool. I love the colors. I definitely prefer the head with faceplate on it versus the exposed mouth, which I know that is accurate to the original design with the mouth being shown, but I prefer this look. It's a great figure in its own right, but in this color scheme it is spectacular. Oh, also, I forgot to mention when I was pointing out his ordnance. These little wheel pods on his legs have missiles on the insides. Yeah. And actually, since I got Perfect Effects' recent standalone release of their not Core Magnus Nemesis Prime, because I got that, it came with this absolutely gorgeous translucent blue giant sword thing, and I adore this. And in addition to adoring the sword, if you pop it apart, swing it around, it can become an axe, and this is just so great. And Nemesis Gorira and the regular Gorira, by extension, can indeed hold it, because it pegs into the hand much like the gun does. So you just line up the slot and the peg, which I'm having a hard time doing for some reason, curl the fingers around it, and now he's got this big cleaver thing, which is fantastic. Or if you would prefer, you can snap this back into sword mode. It's very difficult. Do this off camera real quick. I don't know why that's so difficult to do, but anyway, it goes in the same way, and then he's got this big sword that's... it's so great. Anyway, I feel like I've gotten a bit off track, but yes, I absolutely adore Nemesis Gorira. I don't transform him that often, mostly just because of how unwieldy he is at certain points, and in particular in like the waist section, but it's really not difficult to transform, at least not between the gorilla and robot modes. There's a lot of particulars when it comes to the vehicle modes, but this guy is an absolute treat. And as of this recording, he's actually still available for purchase in a few places. I'm pretty sure he's still up on BBTS. So if anyone's thinking of getting this guy, I would highly recommend it, and you don't even have to worry about paying aftermarket prices, which is good because this guy's MSRP is not cheap, but it's well worth it in my opinion. Anyway, I have talked enough about this particular toy. That's it for my thoughts. What do you all think of Nemesis Gorira here? Whatever your thoughts, feel free to chime in down below. I always enjoy hearing from you all. As always, art is more than meets the eye, and next time, even though I did talk about the Perfect Effect figure, we're not going to look at that guy next. Next, we're actually going to go back to the official Hasbro well with something from a line that's a little bit infamous.